Hello guys, welcome back with another story. Today we will discuss a person who faces humiliation and an impossible choice between love and dignity. When offered a tempting shortcut, they make a surprising decision that changes their life forever. Let's move to the story.
Daniel had never felt comfortable in restaurants where the waiters wore white gloves and the wine list required a sommelier's interpretation. Yet here he sat, tugging at his collar, watching candlelight dance across crystal glasses that probably cost more than his monthly rent. The engagement dinner, Victoria's father had insisted on choosing the venue, and Daniel had agreed, hoping it would be an olive branch. "More wine, sir." The waiter appeared at his elbow, bottle poised. "He'll have water," Harrison Whitmore announced from across the table, not bothering to look at Daniel. Wouldn't want to waste the 82 Mogo on an unrefined palate. Victoria's mother, Catherine, laughed, that tinkling, practice sound that Daniel had learned meant nothing good. "Harrison, you're terrible." Daniel's jaw tightened, but he managed a smile. "Water's fine, thank you." Victoria squeezed his hand under the table, and for a moment, he allowed himself to believe this would be okay. They'd been together for 3 years. She knew where he came from, a mechanic's son from the South Side, worked 2 jobs through community college, now grinding through night classes for his business degree while managing a construction crew during the day. She'd said she loved him for his drive, his authenticity, his refusal to pretend to be something he wasn't. "So, Daniel," Harrison began, swirling his wine with the air of a man conducting an interrogation. "Victoria tells me you're still studying." "Yes, sir. I'm finishing my MBA while working full-time." "How industrious." The word dripped with condescension. "And this construction job, is that meant to be temporary, or is that the height of your ambition?" Daniel felt heat creep up his neck. "I'm a site manager, actually. And yes, it's temporary. I'm planning to start my own development firm once I graduate." "A development firm?" Harrison exchanged glances with Catherine. "How quaint." "Victoria, darling, does he understand the lifestyle you're accustomed to? The expectations?" Victoria's hand went rigid in Daniel's. He waited for her to speak, to remind her father that she'd chosen him, that love wasn't measured in stock portfolios and country club memberships. "Daddy, please," she said, but her voice was weak, almost playful. "Let's not." "I'm simply being practical," Harrison interrupted. "My daughter has certain standards. She's never worked a day in her life, and she shouldn't have to. Her last boyfriend understood that." "What was his name?" "Christopher. The Vanderbilt heir." "You mean the trust fund baby who spent more time at the country club than his own office?" Daniel couldn't stop himself. The table went silent. Catherine's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Victoria's grip on his hand turned painful. Harrison leaned back, a slow smile spreading across his face. "At least Christopher could afford to take my daughter to the country club. Tell me, Daniel, what was your father's profession again? A mechanic, wasn't it? Fixed cars for a living." "He owned his own shop," Daniel said evenly, though his heart hammered. "Built it from nothing. Employed 15 people. Sent 2 kids to college on what he earned with his own hands. How noble." Harrison's smile never wavered. "And yet here you are, asking to marry into a family whose history goes back 7 generations. Whose name opens doors you've never dreamed of walking through. Some might call that opportunistic." Daniel felt something crack inside his chest. He turned to Victoria, waiting for her to defend him, to tell her father that he was wrong, that Daniel had never asked her for anything except her love. Instead, Victoria looked down at her plate, a small, uncomfortable smile playing at her lips. "Some might call it a lot of things," Harrison continued, savoring his moment. "Gold digger comes to mind." And then Victoria laughed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel, at least, not intentionally. But it was unmistakable, a nervous, appeasing giggle that sided with her father and left Daniel completely alone at the table. The sound of Victoria's laugh echoed in Daniel's ears, drowning out the ambient music and the quiet conversations from neighboring tables. He sat frozen, watching her cover her mouth with her hand, her eyes darting between him and her father as if she hadn't just chosen a side. Victoria. His voice came out quieter than he intended. Danny, he's just joking, she said quickly, but she wouldn't meet his eyes. You know how Daddy is. Do I? Daniel withdrew his hand from hers. Because right now, I'm not sure I know you. Harrison chuckled, cutting into his filet mignon with surgical precision. Oh, don't be so sensitive, boy. If you can't handle a little ribbing, how do you expect to handle the pressures of being part of this family? Ribbing. Daniel's voice rose slightly, causing a few heads to turn at nearby tables. He forced himself to lower it. Sir, you just called me a gold digger. If the shoe fits. Harrison shrugged, placing a perfectly cut piece of meat in his mouth. Catherine dabbed her lips with her napkin. Daniel, you must understand, we had certain expectations for Victoria's future. This is all rather sudden. Sudden. Daniel looked at Victoria in disbelief. We've been together for 3 years. I asked your father's permission before I proposed. I did everything the traditional way because I wanted to respect your family. And we appreciate that, Catherine said in the tone one might use with a disappointing child. But appreciation doesn't change facts. You come from a different world, dear. There's no shame in that, but let's not pretend otherwise. Victoria finally looked at him, her eyes pleading. Danny, can we just get through dinner? We can talk about this later. Get through dinner. Daniel stared at her. Your father just insulted everything I am, everything my family is, and you want me to sit here and eat duck confit like nothing happened. You're making a scene, she hissed. I'm making a scene. Daniel pushed back from the table slightly, needing space. Your father is the one. My father is a successful man who built an empire, Victoria snapped, and there it was, the first flash of who she really was, or perhaps who she'd always been. He's protective of me. Is that so wrong? He didn't build anything, Daniel said flatly. He inherited it from his father, who inherited it from his. And being protective is different from being cruel. Harrison set down his fork with a decisive click. Young man, I think we need to be frank here. You're not suitable for my daughter. You lack the breeding, the connections, the financial stability to maintain her lifestyle. This fantasy you two have been playing at, it needs to end. Daddy, Victoria started. Let me finish. Harrison raised his hand. I'm prepared to make this easy for everyone. Daniel, I'll write you a check right now. $50,000. Walk away, and we'll forget this whole unfortunate episode ever happened. The restaurant seemed to tilt. Daniel gripped the edge of the table, certain he'd misheard. You're trying to buy me off. I'm offering you an opportunity, Harrison corrected. $50,000 is more money than you'll see in years doing whatever it is you do. You can pay off those student loans, get yourself established. Everyone wins. Everyone wins, Daniel repeated numbly. He looked at Victoria, searching her face for horror, for outrage, for any sign that she found this as insulting as he did. She was biting her lip, looking uncertain, but not angry. Not disgusted. Just considering. Victoria. His voice cracked. Tell me you're not actually thinking about this. Danny, maybe we should. Should what? Consider your father's bribe. Daniel laughed, a harsh sound that startled even himself. Is this who you are? Is this who you've been all along? Don't you dare judge me, Victoria said, her voice hardening. You have no idea what it's like, the pressure I'm under. My family has expectations. Expectations that apparently don't include me being treated like a human being. Catherine sighed dramatically. Such theatrics. Daniel, if you truly loved Victoria, you'd want what's best for her. And what's best is someone from her own world. Someone who understands the responsibilities that come with the Whitmore name. Daniel looked around the table, at Harrison's smug satisfaction, at Catherine's practiced sympathy, at Victoria's conflicted face that still, even now, showed no real defense of him. Something hardened inside his chest, a painful clarity settling over him like ice water. He'd been so focused on proving himself worthy of their world that he'd never stopped to ask if their world was worthy of him. Daniel's hands were steady as he reached into his jacket pocket. Strange, how calm he felt now that the decision had crystallized. The small velvet box seemed heavier than it had 2 months ago when he'd spent 3 months' salary on the ring inside. A simple solitaire, elegant but modest, chosen with care during his lunch breaks. "What are you doing?" Victoria asked, her voice rising with alarm as he placed the box on the table between them. "Something I should have done the moment you laughed," Daniel said quietly. Harrison's expression shifted from smugness to interest. "Now, let's not be hasty." "I'm not being hasty, sir. I'm being clear." Daniel opened the box, and the diamond caught the candlelight, throwing small rainbows across the white tablecloth. "Victoria, when I bought this ring, I thought I was making a promise to someone who loved me for who I was. Someone who saw value in hard work, integrity, and building something real together." "Danny, please." Victoria reached for his hand, but he pulled back. "Let me finish. I've sat here tonight and listened to your father insult my family, my education, my character. I've watched him try to buy me like I'm some kind of problem to be solved with a check." He turned to look directly at her, and he saw tears forming in her eyes, but he couldn't let that sway him now. "But the worst part, Vicky, wasn't anything your father said. It was your silence. It was your laugh. It was just a nervous reaction," she protested. "You know I love you." "Do you?" Daniel asked simply. "Because love stands up for people. Love doesn't care about breeding or inheritance or country club memberships. Love certainly doesn't sit quietly while someone you claim to care about is being humiliated." Catherine clicked her tongue. "This is exactly what I mean about different worlds. Daniel, in our society, there are ways things are done. Direct confrontation at the dinner table is simply what? Beneath you." Daniel shook his head. My parents taught me that defending the people you love is never beneath anyone. My mother would have walked out of this restaurant the first time someone insulted my father. She wouldn't have sat there calculating social consequences." "Your mother doesn't have a reputation to maintain," Harrison said coldly. "No, she just has character. Turns out those aren't the same thing." The words hung in the air. Victoria was crying now, mascara starting to streak, her composure cracking. "You're just going to throw away 3 years? Everything we built together." "We didn't build anything together, Vicky. I built a fantasy. I convinced myself that love could bridge any gap, overcome any obstacle. But I was building alone." Daniel picked up the ring box and held it out to her. "This belongs to you. I want you to keep it." She stared at the box like it was a snake. "What?" "Keep it. Sell it if you want. Give it to charity. I don't care. But I want you to remember that a mechanic's son bought that ring with honest money, earned through sweat and long hours. I want you to remember that I loved you enough to ask you to be my wife, even knowing your family would never accept me." He set it down in front of her plate. "And I want you to remember that when given the choice between defending that love and keeping your father happy, you chose the latter." "This is absurd," Harrison interjected. "You're emotional, not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking clearly for the first time tonight." Daniel stood, placing his napkin on the table with deliberate calm. "Mr. Whitmore, you asked if I understood the responsibilities that come with your name. I do now. The responsibility to value money over character. To judge people by their bank accounts instead of their hearts. To raise daughters who care more about appearances than integrity." He pushed his chair in, the legs scraping against the floor with a finality that felt appropriate. "I want no part of it." "Danny, wait." Victoria half rose from her seat. "Sit down, Victoria," Harrison commanded, and Daniel watched her hesitate before slowly sinking back into her chair. Even now, even in this moment, her father's voice carried more weight than her fiancé's departing back. "I hope you find what you're looking for," Daniel said to her, his voice softer now. "I hope you find someone who fits into your world perfectly. Someone your father approves of, whose lineage checks all the right boxes, who knows which fork to use for every course. He paused at the edge of the table. But I hope you'll remember, on your wedding day to whoever that person is, that once there was someone who loved you for yourself, not your last name. And you let him walk away because defending him was too inconvenient. How dare you? Harrison started to rise. Save it. Daniel held up a hand. I'm leaving. Enjoy your dinner. I'm sure the rest of the evening will be much more pleasant without the gold digger present. He turned and walked toward the exit, his heart pounding but his head high. Behind him, he heard Victoria sobbing, heard Catherine's scandalized whisper, heard Harrison calling for the waiter, probably to ensure they weren't being watched by other diners. The night air hit Daniel's face like a blessing. He stood outside the restaurant for a moment, letting his eyes adjust to the darkness, feeling the weight of the past settle over him. His phone was already buzzing in his pocket. Victoria, no doubt, or maybe Harrison with threats disguised as concerns. He pulled it out and saw 3 missed calls from Victoria and a string of texts. Danny, please come back. We can talk about this. You're being unreasonable. My father didn't mean it that way. Danny, please. Daniel stared at the messages, particularly the third one. He was being unreasonable. For having self-respect. For refusing to be bought. For expecting the woman he loved to defend him. He turned off his phone. The subway ride back to his apartment gave him time to think, to let the reality of what he'd done sink in. 3 years. Gone in one evening. The ring he'd saved for, the future he'd imagined, the plans they'd made, all of it dissolved because when it mattered most, she'd chosen her father's approval over their love. But as he rode the train through the city, watching his reflection in the darkened window, Daniel realized he didn't feel the crushing heartbreak he'd expected. Instead, there was a strange sense of relief, like he'd been carrying a heavy backpack for miles and had finally set it down. His phone buzzed insistently in his pocket. He'd turned it back on at his stop, a mistake. Along with Victoria's messages, there were now several from her mother and one from Harrison. Young man, you've made a grave error. People don't walk away from the Whitmore family. I suggest you reconsider your hasty decision before you find yourself regretting it. Daniel almost laughed. Even in text form, the man couldn't help but sound like he was addressing servants. His apartment was small, a studio in a building that had seen better decades, but it was his. Paid for with his own money, furnished with things he'd chosen, earned, saved for. As he unlocked the door, he realized that every item in this space represented something real, something he'd worked for. Nothing was inherited. Nothing was gifted by parents trying to maintain appearances. He made himself a cup of instant coffee, the expensive kind he splurged on, which was still probably cheaper than one glass of wine at that restaurant, and sat by his window, looking out at the city lights. His phone rang. Victoria. He let it go to voicemail, then listened to her message. Danny, I'm so sorry. I know tonight was awful. My father was completely out of line, and I should have said something. Can we please talk? I love you. I don't want to lose you over this. Call me back. Please. Should have said something. Not I stood up for you. Not I told them they were wrong. Should have. His phone buzzed again, a text from his older sister, Natalie. Mom told me about the engagement dinner. You okay? Daniel smiled. His family didn't know what had happened tonight, not yet, but Natalie had that sixth sense about when he was struggling. He texted back. Called it off. Long story. I'm okay. The response was immediate. Want company? I can be there in 20. Tomorrow. Tonight I just need to think. Love you, little brother. His loss is someone else's gain. Wrong family, you mean their loss. Exactly what I mean. Daniel set the phone down and realized Natalie had gotten it wrong. It wasn't Victoria's loss. It was his gain. He'd gained clarity. He'd gained the knowledge that he wouldn't compromise his self-worth for anyone. He'd gained freedom from a future that would have slowly eroded who he was until he became unrecognizable. Over the next few days, the messages continued. Victoria called 17 times on the first day alone. Her messages evolved from apologetic to angry to desperate. You humiliated me. Everyone's talking about what you did. My father says you'll never work in this city again. I defended you after you left. Why won't you answer me? I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. We can work this out. Don't throw us away. Daniel read them all but responded to none. What was there to say? That he forgave her. He did, in a way. She'd been raised in that world, taught those values. But forgiveness didn't mean reconciliation. It didn't mean going back to someone who'd let him be treated as less than human because it was socially uncomfortable to object. On the third day, his boss, Raymond, called him into the office. Raymond was a gruff man in his 60s who'd started as a laborer and worked his way up to owning one of the most respected construction firms in the city. He gestured for Daniel to sit, his weathered face unreadable. Got an interesting call this morning, Raymond said, leaning back in his chair. From Harrison Whitmore. Daniel's stomach dropped. Sir, I can explain. He told me I have an employee who doesn't know his place, who insulted his family at a private dinner, who needs to be taught some humility. Raymond paused, letting the words hang. Want to tell me your side? Daniel took a breath and told him everything, the dinner, the insults, the bribe, Victoria's silence. When he finished, Raymond was quiet for a long moment. You gave the ring back, Raymond finally said. Yes, sir. Walked away from a girl whose family could have opened a lot of doors for you. Yes, sir. Raymond nodded slowly, then smiled, the first real smile Daniel had seen from him in months. Good. That's exactly what a man with integrity does. He leaned forward. Daniel, I've been watching you for 2 years. You work harder than anyone on this crew. You treat people with respect regardless of their position. You're going to finish that MBA and go far. He paused. Whitmore wanted me to fire you. Wanted me to make sure you couldn't get work anywhere in the industry. Said I'd regret crossing him. Daniel's chest tightened. I understand if you have to. I told him to go to hell. Raymond chuckled at Daniel's shocked expression. I don't work for Harrison Whitmore, and neither do you. I work for myself, and I hire people based on merit, not social standing. You're one of the best site managers I've ever had. That job is yours as long as you want it. Sir, thank you. Don't thank me. Just keep being the man who walked away from that dinner. That's the kind of man I want on my team. Over the following weeks, Daniel learned that Harrison had made good on his threats, or tried to. He'd called in favors, spread word in certain circles that Daniel was unstable, ungrateful, not to be trusted with positions of responsibility. But he'd underestimated something. The world Harrison Whitmore operated in wasn't the whole world. Raymond made calls of his own, to contractors, developers, and business owners who'd built their success through work rather than inheritance. Daniel found himself with more opportunities, not fewer. People who'd faced similar prejudices, who'd been looked down on for their backgrounds, went out of their way to help him. The biggest surprise came 2 months later when Daniel received a call from Thomas Brennan, CEO of Brennan Development, one of the largest real estate firms in the state. Daniel Cooper, the voice on the phone asked. Speaking. Tom Brennan. I heard an interesting story about you from Ray Peterson. Something about turning down a bribe and walking away from a bad situation with your dignity intact. Yes, sir. That happened. I like that. Shows character. I'm looking for someone to head up a new division, affordable housing development. Projects that actually help communities instead of just displacing them. Ray says you've got the skills and the heart for it. Interested. Daniel almost dropped the phone. Very interested, sir. Good. Let's have lunch. Somewhere with normal silverware. I hate those fancy places where you need a manual to figure out which fork to use. Daniel laughed, really laughed, for the first time since that dinner. I know exactly what you mean. The job with Brennan Development changed everything. It was the opportunity Daniel had been working toward, the chance to build something meaningful. The projects were challenging, the work was demanding, but every day he went home knowing he'd earned his position through merit, not connections or family name. 6 months after the dinner, Daniel was working late at the office when his assistant buzzed him. Mr. Cooper. There's a Victoria Whitmore here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's important. Daniel's hand paused over his keyboard. He hadn't seen or spoken to Victoria since that night. Her messages had eventually stopped, and he'd heard through mutual acquaintances that she was dating someone else, a lawyer from a good family, naturally. Send her in. Victoria looked different. Thinner, perhaps, or maybe just tired. She was still beautiful, still perfectly dressed, but something in her eyes had changed. Hello, Danny. Victoria. This is a surprise. She sat down without being invited, clutching her purse in her lap. I heard about your new job. Congratulations. Thank you. I also heard my father tried to blacklist you. I'm sorry about that. Daniel shrugged. It didn't work. No, it didn't. She looked around his office, modest but professional, earned through his own efforts. You were right. About everything. Victoria. Please, let me say this. She took a breath. That night at dinner, I should have defended you. I should have told my father he was wrong. I should have walked out with you. I didn't, and I've regretted it every day since. I appreciate you saying that. I'm not with Christopher anymore. The lawyer my father approved of. She laughed bitterly. Turns out having the right pedigree doesn't make someone a good person. He was cheating on me with my cousin. My father still wanted me to marry him because it was complicated, and a scandal would reflect poorly on the family. I'm sorry that happened to you. Are you? You should hate me. Daniel considered this. I don't hate you, Vicky. I pity you. You're still letting your father make your decisions. You're still choosing appearances over authenticity. That's not going to change unless you decide to change it. Tears welled in her eyes. I know. That's why I'm here. I wanted to tell you that you were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I was too blind to see it. Too weak to fight for it. Victoria. I'm not here to ask you to take me back, she said quickly. I know that ship has sailed. I needed you to know that you were right. About my family, about me, about all of it. And I needed to thank you. Thank me. For showing me what integrity looks like. For being strong enough to walk away when I wasn't strong enough to choose you. She stood, smoothing her skirt. I hope whoever you end up with knows how lucky they are. Daniel stood as well. I hope you find the courage to live your own life, Vicky. You deserve better than being your father's trophy daughter. She smiled sadly. Maybe someday. She paused at the door. For what it's worth, my mother asks about you sometimes. I think she respected what you did, even if she'd never admit it. After she left, Daniel sat in his office for a long time, thinking about choices and consequences, about the price of dignity and the cost of compromise. His phone buzzed, a text from Natalie. Sunday dinner at Mom and Dad's. Dad's making his famous ribs. Bring your appetite and your laundry. Daniel smiled. Some things never changed, and thank God for that. He texted back. I'll be there. Tell Dad I'm bringing someone. Details now. Her name is Rachel. She's a teacher. You'll like her. Does she know about the Whitmore disaster? She knows everything. Says any woman who wouldn't defend me doesn't deserve me. I like her already. See you Sunday. Daniel looked around his office one last time before heading home. The nameplate on his desk read Daniel Cooper, Director of Community Development. No inherited title, no family connections, just his name and what he'd built with his own hands. It was enough. It was more than enough. As he locked up and headed for the elevator, he realized that walking away from that dinner had been the easiest decision of his life. The hardest part had been all the years before, when he tried to make himself smaller, quieter, more acceptable to people who would never truly accept him. He'd never make that mistake again. Outside, the city stretched before him, full of possibilities, full of people who judged him by his character rather than his pedigree. Somewhere out there, Rachel was finishing her evening class, probably covered in chalk dust and smiling at her students' progress. Daniel pulled out his phone and sent her a text. Dinner tomorrow? My treat. Somewhere with normal forks. Her response was immediate. Perfect. Can't wait to hear about your day. Love you. Love you too. And he meant it. This time, he knew what love looked like, and it looked nothing like that engagement dinner 6 months ago. It looked like someone who chose him every day, who stood beside him instead of making him stand alone, who valued the work of his hands as much as the dreams in his heart. Daniel Cooper, the mechanic's son, walked into the evening with his head high and his heart full, knowing that sometimes the greatest success is walking away from the wrong things so you can walk toward the right ones.